So we find ourselves once again just a few days before paper one of the final exam for GCSE History. And this video has been made for students who are specifically studying America, Opportunity and Inequality 1920 to 1973. And we're focusing on that question 3. By the time you get to this question, you would have already answered questions 1 and 2 if you're answering them in that order. But question 1 being the how are interpretation A and B different from each other. Question 2 being why are they different? And question 3 being which one is more convincing and why. Now, where students have gone wrong on this in the past, in mocks and in assessments, is where they have not brought in their own knowledge. If you're not bringing in your own knowledge, then you really are going to struggle to get outside of a level 1 answer. Now, a level 1 answer is a maximum of 2 marks out of 8. So we really want to be trying to hit those level 3s, possibly even level 4s if we can. Let's have a quick look at an example of 2 interpretations that have come up in the past.
Which interpretation gives the more convincing opinion about the American economy in the 1920s? Explain your answer based on your contextual knowledge and what it says in interpretations A and B. So interpretation A is adapted from the autobiography of Cecil Roberts known as The Bright Twenties, and it was published in 1970. Roberts was an English journalist and novelist. His books were international bestsellers. He had a celebrity lifestyle, travelled widely and stayed with wealthy people. During the 1920s, he toured America to promote his book. Now, it's worth mentioning just here that when we write our answer, we're not really going to analyse the provenance very much. We're going to focus on the content and use our own knowledge to measure how convincing the interpretation is. So it reads, the American economy boomed in the 1920s. Everyone bought cars, radios and gadgets. Everyone invested in the stock market and made money. Everyone gave you advice on which shares to buy. One day in New York, even my barber told me to buy shares in the Standard Gas Company as they had already doubled in value and would probably do so again. As share prices rose, I joined the share buying craze and invested all my money in the stock market. Interpretation B is adapted from a report about the American economy in the 1920s written by Vladimir Voltinsky. Voltinsky wrote this report for the American government in 1945. He was a leading European economist who worked as an advisor for the American government from 1935 to 1960. It reads, the American economy did not last because people stopped buying consumer goods. By the end of the 1920s, consumer demand had been satisfied. Like many industries, the growth in car buying slowed down. Many who bought shares made a lot of money quickly, but later suffered greatly. Other groups, including many farmers, struggled to make money throughout the 1920s.
Now, I know we're sort of in question 1 territory at the moment, the how are they different? But I think before we answer question 3, we need to look at, in fact, how they are different. What is the message of both interpretations?
So interpretation A is saying that the American economy did really well in the 1920s. It was a result of the craze for buying shares. It was easy to make money and people would help each other and give advice about buying shares. Even people that did ordinary jobs such as barbers could make lots of money on the stock exchange. The message behind interpretation B is that economic growth was just short term. Beneath the surface, there were hidden problems with the economy in the 1920s. Some groups such as farmers did not experience prosperity during the 20s at all.
Now, if we just analyse those 2 interpretations just a little bit closer and see if we can add some of our own contextual knowledge to what is being said.
So, looking at interpretation A and using our own knowledge, we know that people made money by speculation with buying and selling shares. The price of shares increased so quickly that people made a lot of profit. We should also know that some people bought shares on the margin, which means to borrow money and to pay off loans once they made a profit. If we apply some of our contextual knowledge to interpretation B, we should know that one of the causes of the Wall Street crash was overproduction. Companies stopped making large profits because sales dropped, and so did the value of their shares. There were several social groups that didn't benefit during the boom, such as farmers, immigrants and African Americans, for all sorts of reasons.
As I go through a model answer that is expected to get 8 out of 8, just take note of how this student has used specific contextual knowledge and where they have made a clear judgment and evaluated the interpretations, where they've said that one interpretation is more convincing than the other and one interpretation is less convincing.
Overall, Interpretation B is more convincing than Interpretation A. Interpretation A argues that the American economy was booming in the 1920s due to consumer goods sales and easy profits on the stock market. This is convincing to an extent because Americans did experience new prosperity thanks to mass production, hire purchase and advertising. For example, Henry Ford's assembly lines made cars cheaper, allowing millions to buy a Model T, radios, vacuum cleaners and refrigerators. Over 20 million people had invested in the stock market by 1929. Often buying on the margin. Robert's experience reflects the excitement and optimism of those who lived in the city, who believed the boom would never end. However, he does not take into consideration what America experienced at the end of the 1920s, which was the Wall Street crash and the subsequent Great Depression. Interpretation B, however, is more convincing because it recognises that the boom was not experienced evenly across America. It was already weakening by the late 1920s as sales of consumer goods dropped. Industries such as construction, coal and textiles were in decline. Even car sales, a key driver of the boom, had slowed down by 1927. Farmers in particular suffered badly due to overproduction, falling prices and the impact of prohibition reducing the demand for grain. Wojtyński also highlights the dangers of speculation. Many Americans made quick profits, but later lost everything when the stock market crashed in October 1929. This was one of the key causes of the Wall Street crash. Overall, Interpretation B is more convincing because it reflects the full national picture, including the weaknesses that led to the Depression rather than the narrow optimism experienced by wealthier Americans in the cities.
So in my experience, this paper on paper 1, whether it's America, whether it's Nazi Germany, question 3 is the question that many students in the past have tripped up on, just simply for not bringing in their own knowledge and also for talking about the provenance where they don't really need to. Remember, you talk about the provenance for question 2, the why are they different? And I might make a separate video on that another time. Anyway, good luck with your upcoming history exam and all the other GCSEs. If you found this video helpful, please leave a kind comment, please like, please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I hope to make another video for paper 2 soon.